My name is NicoleL, and for my Zenith project, I chose to make a 3D game with Unity. Last year, for my Explorations project, I created a 2D game. Prior to my Zenith project, this was my favorite freestyle project I'd done, and I really wanted to do something similar for it. For my Zenith project, I thought about just making a 3D version of my game from last year, but that required a bit too much work in transferring my JavaScript code to C#. I think the blobs also would have looked a bit weird in 3D. I was inspired to make my Zenith game as a tribute to childhood innocence, as it's sort of a reoccurring theme in a lot of my freestyle projects from the past 2 years. In the game, the astronaut character essentially represents a child finally achieving their dream of going to Mars. Because of the time constraints of the Zenith project, my game isn't a super complex one. It's really just a character exploring the terrain around them, and there isn't any objective or quest that the player is completing. For this project, I had to learn how to use the Unity engine. I watched a ton of tutorial videos to help navigate the interface, but I found that a certain YouTuber named iHeartGameDev was especially helpful in nailing the basic skills of 3D Unity. The first thing I did was create the main character of my game. As you'll see in the following videos, I first created the astronaut's basic polygonal shape in Maya before adding finer details in ZBrush. ZBrush was honestly my least favorite part until I discovered the cloth brushes that they had. This made the detailing process a lot less tedious. After that, I transferred it to Substance Painter, where I textured my character. Here I included lots of reflective surfaces, as I thought they would look nice in a Mars sunset style environment in my game. After that, I used Mixamo to find animations for my character and then tried to import my character into the Unity application. This is where I hit my first obstacle. I struggled with getting a correctly rigged model that had all the bones that Unity required, as shown in these error screenshots. However, I was able to fix this by making a rigged model from the Mixamo FBX animations and just importing that into Unity. After I fixed that, I was able to apply my animations to my model and coded booleans in Unity using a character controller component to control my character's movements. I wrote lots of code in Visual Studio to allow the player to control my character's movements with the WASD keys. In the code, I was able to make the animations happen as the character moved and also accounted for rotational movement. I also added code that allowed my character to climb up slopes in the terrain. After that, I implemented a virtual camera that followed the character around the map. I used a Unity asset called Cinemachine. Initially, I ran into issues where my camera just wouldn't be at the correct angle and would also be really bouncy. However, I was able to fix this by using a different Cinemachine camera that followed the character from the same distance rather than constantly moving and adjusting to it. I also put in a vast Mars terrain. I originally only had a regular OBJ as the ground and not a terrain OBJ, which resulted in my character not being able to collide properly with its mountains and ridges. However, I was able to overcome this by installing an obj-to-terrain.cs package that turned my regular OBJ into a terrain. As a terrain, my character was now able to walk properly on the Mars ground. I also added in a gradient sky to give a sunset type of look to Mars. I originally had it as a blue and green, but I later changed it to purple and orange as I feel like it gives a more lonely vibe, which is what I've been going for. I also imported lots of free assets into my game in order to better enhance the environment and its story. Unintentionally, I sort of took on a Lorax style story where the Mars terrain has been depleted of a valuable crystal mineral in order to power human gadgets. The player is left to explore this abandoned land, and through the objects is implied of what occurred in the past. If I had more time, I definitely would have tried to make my own assets rather than importing free ones. I really wanted to make my own childlike spaceship, but after the time I spent making the astronaut, I knew that probably wasn't possible. When importing all these OBJs, I ran into another issue where my character wouldn't collide properly with the objects. It seemed like the collision zone of an object was bigger than it was actually set to be. I figured out that the reason for this issue was that the character controller on my astronaut was actually a collision field too, and it was huge for some reason. So I simply decreased its size and it fixed the issue. Overall, I'm honestly really proud of how my game came out. I genuinely didn't think I would even finish at the rate that I was just getting my character done, but I'm surprised that I was able to pull it off. and also the video that you're watching. I also really valued getting to learn Unity, as I found that it's actually a really useful and interesting application. It was fun getting to learn all the little tricks of the interface just by playing with it. For example, I found out that Unity actually uses the normal and metallic maps that you get when you export textures from Substance Painter, and it makes all the objects look 10 times better. Although it isn't a full-fledged game with levels and objectives, visually I really like what I produced. It came out way better than I expected, and it makes me excited to see what else I'll be able to produce in college.